and welcome to the Horror Bois podcast, the #1 horror movie podcast in all of downtown Kentucky's channel and Twitch now? What? Weird. I'm Austin.
I'm Chris.
Zaya.
That's right. And today we are talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street. We finished all of the 10 first-line, Friday the 13th movies last week, and it's time for a new franchise, and I'm excited to talk about this with my boys today.
As am I.
Yeah.
Pretty excited for this movie franchise in general, to be honest.
That's fair. Oh, my volume's on.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. No.
Oopsie.
I can hear that a little bit.
Oopsie.
Whoopsie.
Oopsie poopsie. But yeah. So let's hop right into this. If you're first, I forgot to tell you what this is. This is a horror movie podcast. We review horror movies. We typically go through, run down the whole plot, and I will say, our first ever time where we have strict time constraints because of other things on this stream is the first time that it was almost 6 pages of notes. This movie had a lot going on in it. So let's hop right into it.
I would just like to give this movie props right off the bat, because in their intro title credits, it's not just a black screen or foggy visual effects. There's something happening on the screen. Is the title.
To be fair to Friday the 13th, they started that around a part 8. 8 through 10 had that.
But we get this cool scene of Freddie making his claws.
Yeah, making his iconic glove during the credits, and then we start the credits still kind of happening. We start with a girl named Tina running through boiler room. There's a random sheep that runs by her. It's a very weird feeling right now, and if you're never seen the movie before, you're not going to quite understand what's going on. If you have a basic understanding of it, you're like, oh, this is a dream. Got it. Mm-hmm. We also know she's not an android because she dreamed of a sheep. That's like Blade Runner, right, or something, or something like that.
The sheep was a unicorn.
Oh, it's a unicorn.
Oh yes, the unicorn. Yeah.
Also, I feel like the sheep is symbolic here in the dream. I'm not entirely sure what, but it feels like she's being led to the slaughter, like a lamb being led to the slaughter.
I like that.
In the boiler room.
I think that's definitely also definitely a possibility, and probably what's there. I also think there's just the sheep imagery with counting sheep to go to sleep. I think there's kind of a double meaning there. But yeah, so she's running through, and she's hearing a voice saying her name that we find out later is Freddie. But at this point, we don't know what voice this is. It's a just kind of creepy voice, and she gets she's running. The scene goes on for a while. Not a lot happens though. She's kind of getting chased for a little while, and then she gets caught by Freddie, cornered, and she wakes up. And then we cut to Tina the next morning, or I guess later that morning, not the next morning.
Yeah. But
we cut to Tina in the morning, telling Nancy and Johnny Depp's character Glenn. That's right, Johnny Depp is in this. Which I guess are we not allowed to be excited about Johnny Depp being in movies now? Is that? I think that might be a thing. Maybe it's Johnny Depp's in this. You take whichever cut, whichever one the society wants right now. I don't know. We might not.
This is his first role in a film ever.
It is, and you can kind of tell.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, he's not bad, but he's not great yet. Yeah. Hello, Monkey Thunder. Welcome. But by the way, if you're a YouTube listener, like we mentioned, which we haven't on the podcast. This is being filmed live, so we will occasionally read chat just to not be rude to our Twitch chat here, but we will try to focus on the podcast. Sorry, I thought I had to burp, but then I didn't. It was an awkward feeling. Sorry. So Tina is telling Nancy and Glenn about her dream the next morning, and then
Her Nightmare on Elm Street, right?
Oh, this is the first time in the movie where we see, before we cut to her telling them, we cut past the, kids in white jumping on rope, which is kind of that, serene thing that's in this movie that I think is supposed to be in the real world every time we see it. I think I can't tell if that's supposed to be the transition from dream or not.
Pretty sure it's like part of the dreamscape.
Maybe.
Or maybe like the blending of reality and the dreamscape.
All right.
Because there's definitely some of that occurs in this movie.
Yeah.
And by some, I mean a very healthy amount of that.
Yeah, they do. They do, especially on a first-time viewing. It's really hard to tell what's a dream and what's not, because the dreams are very surreal. You can't quite, like, it's very. It feels like the transition just kind of happens sometimes, which is nice.
Transitions happen, but there's always, I feel like, hints.
There's hints, yes, for
very
sure.
hefty hints whenever it does happen.
Where were we? So yeah, she tells her about the dream. I believe neither of them are they're both kind of like, whatever at this point in the movie.
Yeah, it's just a dream, whatever.
Yeah. Then Nancy, though, tells Tina she actually had a dream about the same creep with the finger knives that night. Which is that moment where you kind of start realizing something's going on here.
Whoa, you missed the whole scene with Rod, and we are introduced to Rod very briefly after he makes some remarks at the school.
You're right.
And then later that night they have the sleepover.
No, this is on the walk where Nancy mentions the dream. You're all right, Rod shows up during this scene, but Nancy tells her about the dream on the walk.
I thought the finger knives was discussed later that night. Might be misremembering. Probably am.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
Not a whole lot, no.
No. But yeah, so you actually, I think, might be right. You are. I skipped a line where I said that Nancy and Glenn spend the night. So yes, I did skip the scene. You are right. I now am looking at my notes and realizing I am wrong. I apologize deeply. I
was just very deeply moved by Rod's intro scene, so just had to make sure we didn't skip over it.
It was.
Well, that was a joke.
Oh, okay. I will say in this little scene, before we move on past this scene, there is kind of a fun moment with Glenn, like, on the phone with his mom, pretending to be at his cousin's house.
Yeah, the audio.
Yeah, he has an audio recording that he's trying to make her think that he's at this, airport, like by the airport with his cousin, but like on the cassette there's like explosions and gunfire and stuff. So his mom is freaking out a little bit, it's a fun little scene.
Yeah.
But then our three kids here, they hear a noise outside, so they head out there to investigate what it is, and it's Rod. He's back, and he tackles Glenn, and is kind of just gives off this really creepy energy. Is what I wrote. Just like he's kind of slimy. Like, I just don't like him. I don't know if we're supposed to.
Kind of a sleazeball.
Yeah, he's a sleaze. But Tina, she likes it. She's into it. She's into the creep. So they head off into her parents' room to play some harmonica. Wink, wink. If you're a first-time listener, you can figure out what we mean. It's a running joke. Please go back to our back catalog to know exactly why we say that.
Was it 2?
Yes, it's Friday the 13th 2.
It's 2, okay.
Where we say it. But go back to the first one just in case it's there. And then watch every one ever. Please. Please watch it. And then watch them multiple times. And tell your friends to watch them.
Computers to watch them.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, Rod's kind of creepy, and they're playing harmonica really loudly, though.
Yeah.
And we're
Johnny Depp can't sleep and is very beat up about having, morality or whatever.
Yeah. Kind of. I feel like it's both. Like
that's a line that he says. He's like, "Man, morality sucks."
Oh, okay. I missed that line.
And I was like, "Huh? Okay."
Well, he's a good boy. He's saving himself from marriage to play harmonica. Okay. Maybe. Or maybe it's her morality, because then there's also definitely a line later where he thinks she says something, like Nancy. He thinks Nancy is kind of like hinting.
It's not what you think.
So maybe she's the one with morality, not him. I'm not sure. But and glad we're just this whole shot, unlike Friday the 13th, which is nothing but showing gratuitous nudity. This movie, the whole scene is just on Glenn hearing through the walls them play harmonica.
Very loudly.
Then a little bit later in the night, Tina is woken up by the sound of pebbles hitting her window, and a similar voice to earlier is whispering her name. Then we cut to Nancy, who has this creepy moment, like where she's asleep, but above her, like Freddy is coming through the wall towards her. It's a really cool effect.
It's a really cool effect.
Yeah. Which means apparently, which really just kind of really breaks Freddy's like power levels. He's able to mess with both of them in their dreams at the exact same time. So he is a literal, like, omnipresent godlike entity in dreams, not just omnipowerful in his dreams. Like, he is everywhere. He can be in both of their dreams at once, which is really...
Well, yeah, it kind of makes sense, especially when you hear about it, because all the kids talk about, like, oh yeah, well, I had the same dream about the same creepy man.
Yeah, but I feel like those people, dreams only take, like, what, like 20 seconds typically, but they feel like forever or whatever. He could be doing all of those in different people's dreams, like at different points in the night, hypothetically.
I mean, it's possible, but it definitely feels like all those dreams are like a night-long event, at least in the movie.
That's fair.
The science of dreaming is supposed to weigh in on the...
That's actually what we're going to talk about today. Forget the notes. We're talking about the science of dreams.
I mean, there is a whole scene where they talk about the science of dreams and how they don't understand dreams. But we're not there yet.
No, we're not.
Instead, we're talking about
tested him another stone.
Yeah,
people play harmonica, fall asleep, and dreams start happening.
Yeah, so we're back to Tina, and she's following... She's now outside. She's following this voice who's calling her outside.
Because she's an idiot.
Well, it's a dream, and she can't fully control herself. There is that element, or she doesn't realize she can...
Something. She follows the voice for unbeknownst reasons.
To be fair, think about it. Think about in your dreams. You don't typically have full control to not. You kind of just get taken along where the dream wants you to go, unless you're lucid dreaming, like which some people do, but a lot of people never do. So there is an element of I feel like if the dream's telling you to go there, you're going there.
Yeah, which really just adds another layer then of kind of just the Lovecraftian horror that like Freddy is. Yeah. Because sleep is kind of just an inevitable thing of humanity.
Makes it a little bit more formidable, you think?
Oh, absolutely. Because it's just this kind of thing that's impending. There's nothing you can really do to avoid it aside from not be alive. Which is something that like I thought about as soon as I started the movie. I was like, man, Freddy is kind of just like one of the more scary like concepts in horror.
It's fair.
Because I mean, everybody's got to sleep sometime.
It's true.
And if you don't, you kind of just ended up hallucinating in broad daylight anyways.
And it kind of like ups the ante of the whole ineluctable horror movie monster trait.
It does.
Like, you know, because like with Jason, like he's inescapable just because he, well, depending on the movie, he teleports or he just runs fast or whatnot. Like it's his physical prowess.
Yeah.
And here it's even more so like just an impassable barrier, you know.
Yeah.
Once you enter into his realm, it's kind of just his ball game.
Until it isn't, which we'll get to at the very end of this.
Yeah. Well, and no. And but yeah.
But let's get back to where we were, because like I said, 6 pages of notes, we're not done with one.
Whoops. Uh-oh.
Yeah. So, we're back to Tina, she's, you know, now in an alleyway, which, real quick, on the thought of dreams, which actually they kind of hint at later in dreams, is where sometimes you just, next thing you know, you're in a new scene in your dream, which kind of happens to Nancy later, where she's in one place, and then, now she's outside her house. And, like, I think that might be kind of here. I don't know if, to give Tina's character credit, maybe she didn't go looking for Freddy. It's just, I'm in an alleyway now. I definitely can think back to dreams I had where I'm like, I'm doing one thing, and then, I'm completely somewhere else now, and I just, okay. So, I mean...
Yeah, I've had dreams that were completely, like, non-sequiturs to each other. It was just, like, it ended abruptly, and then immediately another dream began.
Yeah.
So...
And how can you even define the ending, right?
Exactly.
Like, I think that's even more the case, is that the walls are just non-existent.
But the point is, she's in an alley now, and Freddy is here and he's walking towards her with this really long arm effect that, on paper, shouldn't work. It should just be silly, but it really is creepy. And credit to Robert Englund. I don't remember exactly how his name is, but credit to Freddy, the actor who plays Freddy. He does such a good job with the little mannerisms that just work.
Yeah. He really is creepy.
Yeah. They actually wanted to do what like most horror movies do and replace him in the next movie, and they like filmed 2 weeks with this other guy and realized no, we just can't do it without him. And then they reshot those 2 weeks with Robert. So because he is Freddy. Like Jason, there's like 6 Jasons. Yes, we all talk about how we all like Kane Hodder as the best, but there are like 4 or 5 other Jasons. There's one Freddy. Well, and there's the remake Freddy, but we don't talk about the remake until we have to talk about it later.
Austin schedules us to talk about it.
Until we're scheduled to talk about that, but that's a while from
Yeah.
now. I'm not looking forward to that. But yeah, he's walking to her with these really long arms, and she starts running away, and we get a little bit of that horror movie cat and mouse, where we're just kind of running for a little bit. Then Freddy gets her attention and just like tells her to look at him, and then he cuts off his finger randomly. It's creepy. I don't quite get it, but he does it, and it's just like, okay. Wow.
I think it's really a large part of Freddy is just toying with people.
Yes.
Because I'm pretty sure he feeds off of fear. To some level. And so the whole like setup and him chasing, because as we can see in the chase, it doesn't really matter if she runs away, because he can literally just teleport right in front of her, which he does in the alleyway. She's like running, and then we see Robert England's like goofy run, where he does this whole like arms out and everything, which is a little bit goofy.
But somehow doesn't feel as goofy as it should be on paper. Like when we describe it, it sounds stupid, but it works.
No, it does. It really does. And then you're like, oh, well, she's running a lot faster, and then he's just in front of her.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, she's screwed. Cool.
Which is, once again, we'll get to it a little bit more when it happens more, but that's kind of one of my actual little bit of problems with this movie is he's omnipowerful until they just decide he's not. Or, like, this movie I feel like has one of the worst, like, main character is immune because of main characterness. Like, she falls asleep multiple times and Freddy doesn't kill her in the time he kills other people in their sleep because she's the main character. And that's one of my little flaws with it. And, like, I get it. Like, I do get it. It is a movie and Nancy had to, spoiler, Nancy has to survive because Nancy's the character that they wanted to survive. I get that on, like, a fundamental level. But also, it's like, he was able to kill all these other people way quicker. But Nancy, even before she's actually, like, starting to understand what's going on, like, later, sure, she's got a little bit more power in the situation because she knows what's happening. He just doesn't kill her. Just pointing that out. Because, like you're saying here, he can just teleport in front of her to kill her when he's ready. But when he wants to kill Nancy later, he doesn't. Which is something that happened to Jason all the time as well. But this movie, I feel like, is... When you have a character like Jason, he did still, until later, had a lot more, like, set... He was still kind of a human. He still had to kind of follow rules. Yeah. Freddy should just be able to teleport and kill her when he realizes she's starting to escape. But he chooses not to. And just, that's my one little flaw so far. I mean, we'll get to... There's a couple other flaws I have with, but...
A valid criticism.
But yeah, so he cuts his finger, scares her. He catches her then. They struggle a little bit. She rips his face off in this really, like, one-shot grotesque scene. Like, it's really cool, but it's like, okay,
the visual
wow.
effects in this movie are insane for the time.
Yes, for sure. And especially the budget. Yeah. This movie had, like, a $1 million budget, and it's able to do what it does, which is stuff that, like, at the time, $10 million movies weren't always getting this good of budget. Like, they did a lot with what they had. Now we cut back to Rod, who is being woken up by the thrashing that's happening next to him, and Tina is being, like, thrown around the whole room in this, like, really awesome scene where, like, it's all from Rod's point of view, where he just sees Tina getting thrown around the whole room, and, like, just
stomach slashed open.
Stomach getting slashed open without him being able to see how, and, like, he just sees the slashes happen, and she's, like, literally getting thrown around the whole room because, like, the way they filmed this was in this, like, spinning room, so they could get her on the walls and roof and stuff without, like, wires and stuff.
Makes sense.
But yeah, so she's thrashing around. Eventually, there's actually I really like how it ends. Like, she hits the bed, and like it's like blood splatter on Rod's face. It's really visceral. And, yeah, well, I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, I would be worried.
Well,
how do you
His girlfriend was killed by an invisible force, and
we see what happens when he tries to explain it. No one believes him. Can you blame him for leaving? I mean, no one trusts.
You know what? In my position, and never having to face. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's your thing. That's your Chris. We're gonna go through all these really dangerous situations. We're gonna set you up and make it look like you killed someone, and see how you respond.
Oh yeah, all right. That's my stunt.
That's your stunt.
I've got the better straw somehow.
Oh, Chris, there's a stunt I'm making you do at the end of this
hurled from a building.
But yeah,
hurled from the second story of a house. Let's not. I haven't.
Can't even remember the position you take on like whether or not you'll live or die from, because we've got like 2 houses now and it's irrelevant. But
yeah, she dies, and Rod runs away through the window, and we now cut to an officer bringing briefing Nancy's dad on what happened. We don't know it's Nancy's dad quite yet in this first scene where he's getting all this information.
Yet until about 30 seconds later.
Yes,
when
but there's like
the office.
Yes, there was a solid minute there where we don't know, where he's just, excuse me, the police chief or lieutenant. I think he might be a lieutenant. I think he's a lieutenant. I think they call him a lieutenant at one point. That doesn't matter.
No.
But yeah,
and it will not stop us from getting hung up.
But it doesn't stop my brain from going, boy, what was he? But yeah, so he's briefed on it, and he walks into his office where Nancy and her mom are there, and we find out that he's her parent, and we have a little bit of an expositional scene with Nancy kind of explaining everything. And something I'm going to point out, that the consensus online is not this, but this is something I couldn't take away from after this, is I don't like Nancy's acting in most of this movie. She is... I heard people like in a review like talk about how, oh, the great acting by Heather here, and I'm like, it's one thing to like say, oh, you don't mind the acting, and that's fine, but like I don't understand. Like, I thought she was bad in a lot of scenes. Like, there's a couple scenes where she did okay, or maybe even good, but there was also a lot of scenes like this scene where just like she just doesn't know how to be emotional as an actress. Like, she's just awkward. There's a couple other points which I think I wrote down, so I'll point out when I remember them happening, but like, I just thought she was really awkward in the scene, like trying to get her parents, like I don't know how to explain it. Just, it was really like bad, whiny acting. Was my thought.
A little artificial.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can definitely feel that. I feel like later on when she's playing a more like manic, nervous, character, it feels a little bit more natural.
She's
but
really
yeah,
bad at being
a lot of
sad.
There's a lot of parts in the beginning of the movie where it just feels very unnatural.
Yeah. Apparently she's never been sad in her life, but she has gone on like a 5-day binge without sleeping. And you know what? Power to her. Respect.
You know, who hasn't?
And then we cut to the next morning, and Nancy is still planning on going to school, but her mom, she's not really happy with that. She thinks she should probably stay home because she heard her tossing all night and didn't think she got enough sleep. But Nancy insists that she'll be fine. So she heads out. And Nancy's... I don't know what's happening in this scene. I think it's more so just maybe like a slight daydream where she sees someone like Freddie. I don't know. There's like this one shot of this guy staring at her who I don't know who it is. And then it's never seen again or really explained.
Oh, yeah. That's true. There's the guy in the suit with the sunglasses on.
Yeah, which like I guess
and that might be just like Robert Englund.
It probably. And it's probably supposed to be like her being freaked out by Freddie, but also it's never explained. And like it's not like something like it's not like a reoccurring thing where she keeps seeing this character throughout the movie before a big reveal that it's because she's actually like nodding off while walking or something like that. It's just... And this is really early on where she hasn't really stopped sleeping yet. Like, later, she stopped sleeping, and then if this started happening, I'd kind of understand it, because it's like, like, she's, like, the psychosis, like you mentioned, the psychosis that comes from not sleeping.
Yeah.
But she's still really early on, and just, I don't know, maybe the grief's making her. I don't know. I don't know what the point of this one thing was, other than to be creepy for this scene. Also, there's a very good chance that I'm just overanalyzing this movie, because that's what we do. We overanalyze this. Maybe that's the fundamental flaw with our show, is maybe horror movies are just meant to be ingested and not taken in. And even the good ones.
If there was one horror movie like ripe for analysis, it would be Nightmare on Elm Street.
Fair. Then then explain this scene to me, Isaiah.
Oh, I can.
Okay. But yeah. So, then on her way to school, Rod grabs her and pulls her behind a bush to try to, tell her, like, hey, I didn't do it. I don't know what happened. And she's not quite believing him yet, but you can definitely tell there's, like, seeds of like, being like, oh, okay, maybe, I don't know. It seems like he seems genuine, maybe, is what she's noticing here. But as he leaves her, her dad shows up. And he starts running, but there's a bunch of other cops, and Rod gets arrested here. Because, he fled the scene of his girlfriend's death.
Yeah, it did seem really strange that, like, her dad was just there by happenstance.
I feel like there's a very good chance...
And just knew that Rod was going to, like, tackle his daughter that morning.
I think, to be fair to that, this I will be fair to the movie, I think the implication was that he was tailing his daughter because he knew she was involved in all this and was trying to protect her. And therefore, he would be ready to go immediately if... I don't know, I kind of thought that, that makes sense. He seems kind of like a protective father, so he would be willing to, he would be, like, have someone to... The fact that it's him may be a little weird, but, like, I feel like it would make complete sense for there to be some sort of police force on her at all times after her being involved so closely. Where were we? Now we're in class.
And then he gets arrested, yeah.
Yes. Now we head to English class, and Nancy's teacher is teaching Hamlet. And obviously, because Hamlet is being taught, Nancy is bored, and she goes to sleep.
Yeah. Fun fact, that teacher is played... by the actress who stars in, like, most of the Insidious films.
Huh.
It's like the old psychic lady.
She's also the reason she's in this, and maybe later in that as well, is she is, like, the producer's sister.
Oh.
I would okay. Do you know if, like, Insidious and stuff is made by New Line?
I don't know.
It's fair. Because if it is, she might just be constantly... Maybe, like, she's good at her job, but she's constantly getting jobs slightly due to nepotism, maybe.
No, that's right. It's Blumhouse.
Okay. So maybe not. Then.
Old Blumhouse.
Maybe it was paying homage to this movie when they gave her the role. It doesn't... I don't know. But yeah, she's also... But fun fact, she's also the producer's sister. I watched a documentary about this movie last night after I finished the movie. So I'm chock full of some information about the movie.
Ooh.
Where were we?
I'm still really curious about that man in the suit. I forgot about it because he was just there and then never showed up again. Mm-hmm. Which maybe makes me think that maybe that was him before, he got cooked.
Maybe, but why would she be seeing him in the daytime when he only has powers over... That's the thing, it doesn't make sense, because it's also at the point too early for her to be so tired she's falling asleep while walking.
Yeah.
Like, later on, there is that moment where, like, kind of, you can't tell when and not she's awake because she's so far gone. But, I feel like at this point...
I was just going to say, the premise of the movie, as it's explained, is always a monster that haunts dreams discreetly, right? Like, but I mean, the whole thing that it plays with the whole time is that, like, the gap between reality and dreams is difficult to define.
Yeah.
And, like, the power that he wields over people who are dreaming, it is while they're dreaming for the most part that we see, but it's not like they wake up and they're only harmed mentally, right? I mean,
no,
they're physically tossed around. And so, like, he does, in a sense, have power, or he himself at least inhabits the physical world. to a degree.
To some degree, yeah.
I mean, I can't explain like the
I
figure
feel like
himself.
I have no problem with this scene if it was later in the movie. Like they establish.
And who knows?
She's
Maybe
trying
it
to
was
stay
filmed.
awake.
Yeah, they establish her like breaking later in the movie. Like there's that moment where she's like on the phone, like jumping ahead, and we'll get to it when it actually comes up. But when she's on the phone with trying to call Glenn, but then she realizes she's actually asleep. But then runs downstairs and is like yelling at her door, awake, but all like within the same shot, and it's like it's weird. It's that point she's like the world is breaking down around her because she's been staying awake for like 6 days at that point. I get it then. At this point, this is her first like night not sleeping, and she's already hallucinating. It just seems a little too early, especially for something that's never like explained. But also, I'm probably and definitely am overanalyzing it, and it's not that important. It's probably literally just there to be a creepy shot that they're like they might have an explanation for it, but they might not, and who cares? It really doesn't matter. Like I get that.
I looked it up and couldn't find anything for it, so
yeah,
it might just not matter.
Yeah, but it's back to her being tired.
In school.
In school, Hamlet's boring. She goes to sleep.
Oh my gosh, we cannot let the scene pass without pointing out like they could have chosen anything and they chose Hamlet. And I feel like the two theories could be that one, the whole premise, if you've at least seen The Lion King, then you understand because it's a remake of Hamlet.
Right.
That, there's a ghost, and like the ghost plays a central. I don't know, that might be pretty thin, but the other alternative that comes to mind is from the real famous like To Be or Not to Be soliloquy, when he says, I looked it up, for in that sleep, to die to sleep or chance to dream, for in that sleep of death what dreams may come. And so
I think it's that one. Genuinely, I think it's definitely the latter. That sounds like that's probably why they chose that.
And so is that a line that the guy's reading when she like falls asleep and wakes up in her dream? Is that line that she's reading actually from Hamlet, where he's talking about he's talking about like what dreams of death or something?
Yeah, that's what he just read. That he
Yes.
Was it just? Was that the line that he just read?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if what the guy in the movie read was actually the line, because I don't know if I'm remembering that like exactly correctly.
It's really kind of hard to tell what he reads because he reads it in a stage whisper, and that was like a direction he had to try to show the.
He did read it in a stage whisper, but I had subtitles on.
It's fair, but we were focusing on a lot of stuff that, as much as I get it, and I like the discussion, we do need to slightly move on a little bit back to like. We've been on this scene
page
for a while,
notes.
and we're on page 2 of notes. So
anyways, now she's dreaming.
She's dreaming.
She goes into the hallway.
Well, pause. We get a little bit of stuff to that. She sees Tina in a body bag in the door frame, and she starts following Tina into the hallway. She looks down the hall.
The body bag. It's a really cool visual, I think.
Oh yeah, she's really cool with that. There's also I really love the shot where nothing is dragging Tina away down the hall a little bit. That's a really cool scene. This whole scene is really cool. Where were we?
So now she goes out.
Yeah, she's being dragged. She runs into the hall monitor, who asks for
wearing a red and green sweater.
She's wearing a very, she's wearing the Freddy sweater. And she asks for the hall pass. And she says like screw your hall pass, pushes her down, and then the girl gets back up, bloody face, and with the glove with Robert Englund's voice said, what was the exact?
No running in the hole.
Yes, I couldn't remember the line. I knew it was a clever line, but yeah. And then she keeps going. She heads to She goes down to the basement, which is a giant boiler room. Same boiler room from, obviously this is not, I don't believe this is not the real school, like, boiler room. But it's that dreamscape boiler room that is so synonymous with Freddy because of this movie. Like, in all the parodies you see of this, they always call back to this boiler room scene. So yeah, she's being chased down there. So she's not being chased yet. She's just kind of going down there. I think she's hearing, Tina's voice at this point. She's hearing Tina like call her, if I remember right. And she finds Freddy, who like lifts up his shirt and like cuts his stomach open.
And there's maggots and green goo inside.
There was also the same green goo did come out when he cut his fingers earlier, so I guess this green goo is his blood. It's creepy in like the best way. I like it's fun. But it's also weird. It's just one of those things where it's just kind of weird. I don't get it, but I don't mind. Like we talked about earlier the things I didn't get and I was angry about. Not angry. Angry is probably a little extreme. I played up a little bit for the podcast.
Furious.
But yes, absolutely infuriated by.
Livid.
No, but I don't really care. But things like this, I don't get it all. Like, why does he keep cutting himself open? How is that? Like, I mean, I guess I would probably be freaked out by it, but it just feels like he's not, like, playing on, like, their fears at all here. He's just kind of like, I'm cutting myself open. Like, okay. All right. Weird. So then he starts chasing her through the boiler room, and I say as this epic 80s, like, rock starts playing, it's like this really cool, like, rock song that plays while he chases her, and it's just like it happens a couple more times. Like it's fine. It just was unexpected at the moment because the rest of the score so far had been kind of more score like, and this felt like this felt like they all felt like a movie score, and this felt like we were about to go into like a rock song, and I was like, oh, okay, didn't see that coming. Didn't have a problem with it. Just thought it was of note. It was some nice music. And she gets cornered, and she decides that the best way out is to burn herself to wake herself up, which it works. And it forces her to like wake up screaming and freaking out in class, and she gets sent home because she really shouldn't have been in school in the first place. Like, there's no way anyone should have let her go to school after she literally witnessed her best friend die the night before.
Yeah.
You get a day or two to, stay home.
Grieve.
Yeah, and even if she says, no, I need to go to school, you go, no, you're not ready. But, so Nancy goes outside, and she starts to cry, but, and then I said this is one of those other times where I point out that I don't like Nancy's acting at this point in the movie, because she's supposed to be crying, and I get people deal with grief in different ways, but Heather is practically smiling as she's supposed to be distraught. And it's like, I get it. I'm not an actor. I'm sure it's not easy to do this. But it took me out of the scene a little bit. I was like, oh, okay. She's like practically smiling as she's supposed to be distraught. And, she's realizing Freddie is real, like in some capacity. She maybe doesn't realize fully what it means, but she just saw the same guy again, the same guy that her best friend described, and now her best friend died mysteriously. Like, she's freaked out by this and supposed to be, like, broken by this at this point. And she's just, like, still smiling. Because the actress just can't... She's not great at, sadness yet. Maybe she gets better. She has, years of career after this, so... She's a literal, child when this movie is being made. So, like, give her credit. It's fine. But it did take me out of the scene a little bit. She then goes to visit Rod in jail to get his side of the story. He tells her that he saw Tina get cut by 4 invisible razors, what seemed like 4 invisible razors, before telling her he had nightmares about Freddie as well that he never felt to bring up to anyone, even when his girlfriend was telling the story about how she was freaked out. Didn't think to be like, it sounds like my nightmare.
Yeah.
You think one of these kids would have been like, whoa. Well, that's the same weird. Like, at least, I don't know, just a little bit of...
Yeah.
They all choose to not ever talk about it, which does kind of play into the theming, which is definitely we'll get to in a little bit with the parents' involvement. There was a big theme in this movie of, like, hiding the truth. And, like, the dirty truth needs to be hidden. To, like, make society keep going. And, like, not that that's right, but that's what people do. So now we cut to Nancy, who is in a bubble bath, and she's singing the little Freddie nursery rhyme before she does not pay attention to the nursery rhyme she just sang, and she falls asleep.
Yeah. 9, 10, never gonna Oh, I'm asleep again. Uh-oh.
Yep, and
It shouldn't have made it so soothing, you know?
yeah, it's true. It is a nursery rhyme where we do sing those to send kids to sleep. This is really actually a deep irony in
rhymes.
Yeah.
Like backing to heavy metal.
Yeah, like that rock ballad from earlier. That rock, it was epic.
But yeah, she falls asleep in a bathtub, and we get this really cool shot of Freddy's claw like reaching up from betwixt her legs, which is both really creepy on multiple levels.
Yeah, which I guess this is the point where we should talk about the subtext, the really creepy, very like sexual subtext with Freddy. He is very much, which a little bit of a we find out a little bit.
Implied.
Yeah, it's implied at this later. It's mentioned that he is a child killer, but in like original drafts and in the remake, they straight up say it. I'm not gonna say what he does because of YouTube and. Sorry, we're good boys, Susan. But he definitely does more than just kill. He does some stuff before he kills the kids.
Yeah.
You can connect the dots.
He is a very evil man.
Yeah, and so there is that subtext. The subtext is still really much there. The creepiness, the way he's like in these kids' bed, these young girls' beds, and like there's a lot of like him reaching his hand from between her legs. Like there's a lot of like. There's the phone scene later, which we'll discuss. Like, there's a lot of creepiness, which I mean, yes, obviously it's a horror movie, but like, there's a weird.
It's a very intentional,
a very unsettling creepiness. Because it's one thing to be like, ooh, gross, creepy monster, but this is like the subtext of like a creepy monster that's real.
Yeah.
And like, there's no
real creepy monsters that just exist. Outside
yeah, there's no demon that kills you in your sleep, but there is creeps that go into your bed. It's just like, so it's a real, this is that kind of like, this is one of the most blatant moments of it,
like a realm of reality.
Yeah, which adds to the unsettling,
another depth of horror.
Yes. But before Freddy can do anything, her mom knocks on
the sauce.
Yeah.
Knocks on the door.
Yeah.
And Freddy's hand slips back into the water super quick.
And she's like, "Oh, I'm fine." And so she goes, but then she goes almost immediately back to sleep, and she starts getting like, dragged.
Impressive, honestly.
Yeah, it really is. She starts getting dragged back into the water, and like this really cool like shot from under the water because it's like a giant tank of water they filmed this in, so it has like this like being dragged into an ocean feel, but in a bathtub. Like it's really well done. Yeah. That's one thing I will say. Like, I have some problems with a little bit of the theming, as we mentioned, or some of the acting, but the like cinematography and like
the effects are all like
amazing.
Insane.
Yeah. But yeah, so she freaks out. She eventually is able to wake herself up though, in time to like get out of the tub. And then her mom comes in and she lies to her mom again, saying that she's completely fine, that she just slipped, and that's it.
And Mom's like, well, hundreds of people die that way every year.
Yeah, you gotta be careful.
Drowning in their bathtub.
But yeah, so Nancy's mom leaves, and Nancy opens the medicine cabinet and finds some anti-sleeping pills. And she takes those. She doesn't, like, take the pills in this scene, but she, like, takes the bottle with her.
Fast acting, stay awake.
Yeah. Yes. We cut to her a little bit later in the night, watching a horror movie, trying to stay awake. Glenn shows up at her window. He asks her if she slept at all, and she says no. And I really like this scene. She then looks in the mirror and says that she looks 20, which is just, I think it's funny that like this character thinks 20 is old, which we all definitely had those points in our lives. But like now as 25-year-old, I'm like, 20, and you think you're old? That's old? Oh no! Ew! Stop it.
Ancient.
No,
yeah.
I'm not
so aged years and years.
I can't imagine what like my father thinks when he watches this movie. That man's old.
Jeez, just gonna slam on your dad real quick.
Yeah, that's my thing.
Your loyal listener, your dad.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, she then tells him, she asks him to stand guard for her, and at this point we kind of don't. I mean, if you're paying attention, you can figure out what she means, but they don't outright say that she wants him to stand guard and watch over while she's sleeping. So then we cut to this scene of her going to look for. She says she's going to like find the person who did this, And so she goes to sleep, and she starts walking. She leaves the house. This is one of the moments where I go, there's actually a really kind of good tell if you're not sure if she's asleep. She's not wearing shoes, which I feel like is a really good tell of she's obviously asleep and it's a dream, because no one's leaving their house in the middle of the night with no shoes.
Yeah.
You throw on some shoes real quick. So it's I think that's actually I think that was on. I mean, probably might have not been, but I think that's kind of a cool little like Easter egg at this point, where if you're still not fully sure yet at that point when she first leaves the house, you can look and be like, well, that just doesn't seem right. She can like grab a coat or anything. This movie takes place in Ohio, like during the school year. She probably would have grabbed a hoodie or something and some shoes, but she didn't, which kind of shows that it's a dream. And she starts walking. She leaves the house, and she first place she goes after leaving the house is the alley from earlier. Nothing happens there. She kind of just looks through like a broken window. Then she heads to the police station, where she looks through the window at Rod's cell, and she sees Freddie come into the room, and he just phases right through the cell wall. The bars.
Yeah, the
bars. The
iron bars.
The iron bars. He phases right through them, kind of looks up at her. I think he might even wink, or he like tells her to shush or something. There's some sort of creepy like moment there. And then she freaks out. She runs inside. Wait, no, she runs home.
Yeah.
She starts running home, and Freddie is chasing her back. But when she starts going up the stairs, she starts stepping into these like gooey like stairs, and the stairs fall out under her.
Yeah, the shoes are like melted marshmallow.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
It's actually Bisquick, apparently. Fun facts.
That was physically what they used?
Yeah, it's like apparently if you make Bisquick and you make it like a little bit thicker and then like let it sit out, it like becomes this like super gooey mess like that, and that's what they used for that scene. And also, scene was apparently a scene that Wes Craven did not want in the movie, but the producer really wanted it because it was like based off of one of his nightmares, and so Wes Craven eventually was like, all right, fine, and let him put that scene there. Just that specific, like the stairs scene. I don't know about anything else around this scene, but the stairs.
I thought it was a cool scene.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I like it, but it was not in Wes Craven's initial vision. But
no Bisquick stairs.
Yeah.
It's not Freddy's. It's not his modus operandi.
But yeah. So she's back upstairs, and she's saying this isn't real. It's just a dream. She's looking in her mirror. She says this, and then Freddy tackles her through like her door and mirror, and is on the bed attacking her, and she's just screaming, and then she's
rolling around.
She's saved by her alarm clock though, because Glenn did not do his job. He did not stand guard.
He fall asleep.
Fell asleep. So now Glenn and Nancy head to the police station. Nancy begs her dad to go check on Rod, who we find out as she goes there is while that scene's happening, he's kind of starting to get like tied up by his sheets.
Yeah, he's about to be hung by his own sheets.
And right before they get there, it looks like he committed suicide, which just kind of adds to the whole he killed her and now is killing himself story. Like it makes it make him look even guiltier. Freddie made sure to make him look even guiltier. We now cut to Rod's funeral. Nancy tells her mom and dad a description of Freddie, and her mom and dad both seem a little shook up by this. We don't quite know why yet, but you can tell that description really hit home to them. Now we have her mom taking her to a sleep institute to have some tests done. There's a lot of technical jargon that really doesn't really amount to anything, so we will just jump now to when she is in REM sleep. And Nancy starts freaking out as she has a nightmare, and apparently some of the numbers are higher than ever before, which shows this is a worse nightmare than most people deal with. It's something special. It's something,
not before seen.
Yeah, exactly. And she ends up waking up, and she has this like cut on her arm, and she also has his hat, which freaks out her mom even more. And kind of, this is the point where it started. When we come back to the house, we've realized, and this is the first time it's kind of shown throughout. I didn't write it down when I was watching the movie, but Nancy's mom really starts drinking at this point to try to mask what she is feeling here. So pretty much every other time you see Nancy's mom, she is either has a bottle of alcohol, is acting drunk, like she is hidden the sauce to try to distract herself from the guilt she feels for what's going on right now. Which I will say, when I first watched this movie, I was really actually mad around this point. Not first time, but when I watched it last night. I watched this years ago, but last night I was really mad when I watched it because I was like, this is just, it's such that stupid trope of the parents aren't willing to listen even when they're yelling at them in their face practically. But yeah. I really do think that when I watched a video about it where someone else explained, and I kind of really, they opened my eyes to a perspective I didn't think about here, which is Nancy's mom specifically, because she's the example we see the most of, is it's the theming of middle America hiding the true dirty underbelly that's there, which is what Wes Craven was going for here, which was like this, this dirty stuff happens on your Elm Streets and your main streets, and we just kind of
sweep it under the rug,
pretend like it didn't happen. Her mom forces to drink because it's easier to get drunk and tell her daughter to just go to sleep than actually deal with the guilt she feels for killing Freddie in some ways. Because even if he was a monster, he was still, she went against the typical vigilante justice, still hurts. Like it makes you, it breaks people to have to kill someone. Which, we're only like a scene ahead in that spoiler there, because then this is actually the point where I actually kind of slightly change on Heather's acting. I think she does a really good job in this scene of yelling at her mom. Like, she's good at, like, righteous anger. She's not good at sadness. She does a really
explosive.
Yeah, she's really explosive and, like, mad at her mom. Like, why aren't you listening? Like, look, it says Fred Krueger. This is, like, you obviously, that name, you freak out when I say that name. That means something. Why are you doing this? And so her mom...
I dig all the... I think I'm willing to accept all the social interpretation that that's the aim. And I think in addition to it, like not instead, but in addition to it, I mean, we can discuss it more at the end in greater depth, but this is like the whole movie is the classic setup of, a child waking up from a nightmare and telling their parents a dream. That's like a very deep and early fear for people, like just early on in their lives. And it's the same phenomenon that like continuing to adulthood at a much more extreme scale with Krueger. And I think commensurate with that scale is the parents' disbelief, right? And like the sense of isolation that follows. Parents minimizing the dream. It can't hurt you, it's just a nightmare, wake up.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. I mean, we can discuss it more at the end. But
yeah. I also realized that I was also jumping ahead a little bit with some of that stuff. Her telling them this full story about Freddie has not happened yet. She gets mad at her, and she tells her it couldn't be Freddie because Freddie's dead. That's all that happens in this yelling in the kitchen scene. Yeah. Then Glenn tells Nancy, we cut to Glenn and Nancy on a bridge, and he tells her about, Botswana? Belarus. Mm. Some country with a B, I'm sorry. They have
not super essential to the plot.
Yeah, they have this system called dream skills where they learn from their dreams, kind of a thing. He also sees that she has this. I also wrote that Nancy still can't act in this scene after Glenn sees her booby trap book. Apparently, I did not like her acting in this scene. I don't remember not liking her acting in this scene at this point, but I wrote that, so apparently I still did not like her acting at this point. Where were we? All right. Now Nancy comes home to barred windows, and the rose trellis has been pulled down. And this is the point where Nancy's mom tells Nancy Freddie's past as a child murderer and how the parents, they killed him after he got free off of a technicality due to a
judge not signing a warrant on the right spot.
Yeah, it's like the most crap, oh, that sucks kind of moment if that kind of crap happens in real life. It was such a technicality. He was guilty. Everyone knew it.
Yeah.
So
the
they
parents
took
band together and burned him alive in a boiler room or something that he was holed up in.
Yeah. So that happens, and she also shows her like Freddie's glove from like when he was actually killing in the real world. And they apparently keep that in their furnace, wrapped up. That's where it's kept.
Mm-hmm. Little souvenir.
Well, it's also just like it's wrapped up in there and like in a cloth, and like so they never use their furnace. It's not
apparently not.
In Ohio, they never once used their furnace.
No,
those Ohio winters, nothing to care about.
We've got central heating system now.
The
furnace is more just decorative.
I don't know. In '84, in the house that still has a furnace, they might not have like good central heating. But
possible.
They might. But yeah. So now Nancy, she calls Glenn and tells her her plan to pull Freddie out of the dream world, and how she needs Glenn to wake her up and hit Freddie with a baseball bat at midnight. And she tells him not to fall asleep in the meantime.
And so naturally, Glenn falls asleep in the meantime.
But
classic Peter.
So once he falls asleep, his mom comes in and wakes him up. It's only 11:42 though, so he's fine. He's actually going to be awake at the right time. Nancy's mom takes 3 mugs and a coffee pot out of Nancy's room before tucking her into bed. And after she leaves, Nancy pulls out another coffee pot. She had it ready to go, already brewing coffee. You can tell her mom must be really wasted because she does not react to the smell of this new brewed pot of coffee that she definitely should be able to smell.
Doesn't she also bring a bottle of vodka out of a closet shortly after?
Yeah, yes, she does. Yes, it's the same bottle. It's the same bottle she hides behind her in the kitchen yelling scene.
Well, no, because that bottle broke.
Oh, you're right.
So I think
it's
she just bought another
brand
bottle
of bottle.
Vodka.
You're right. You are right. That did break in that scene.
Well, she's a loyal customer of non-specific brand of vodka.
It looked like maybe Grey Goose.
Possibly. Who knows? It's a 1984 bottle of alcohol, so it's almost certainly not the same.
She leaves Nancy, and then Nancy pulls out the other cup of coffee, or the pot of coffee, and she changes her clothes. Then we cut to a scene where she tries to... we cut to Glenn's dad standing outside staring at their house and talking to Glenn's mom about how he doesn't like them and how she's a bad influence on his kid.
Kid's a lunatic. I don't want my kid hanging around that kid.
We cut back to Nancy getting ready to meet up with Glenn again. She calls Glenn, but he's asleep. His dad tells her he's asleep, can't talk, and he hangs up. And she, starts freaking out and ends up knocking the phone off the line after hearing a voice that sounded like Freddie on it at the end of the call, and then knocks it out, and then gets another call from Freddie. And he calls her, even though the phone line's dead, and he says that
the phone becomes like a mouth.
First he says the line, "I'm your boyfriend now," and then that happens.
Oh yeah, he does.
Yeah, and he
like a weird tongue.
Licks her through the phone. It's which at that point where here you kind of realize she's slipping in and out of consciousness, because at this point she's on the phone with his parents. It seems like that scene actually happened in the real world. But then immediately she's already back to being able to be scared by him on the phone, because she is not slept in days, and she's living off of coffee and sleeping pills, and that's
which then begs the question that even if you do manage to not fall asleep, do you end up just falling into the dreamscape anyways? Once
maybe
you become that sleep deprived,
maybe sleep deprivation.
His powers kind of meld into your world a little bit.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Maybe as we watch more of this series, we'll find out some more details on this. Probably not, because I think it just gets kind of weirder as it goes on, but we'll see.
Hope we don't. Frankly, I like the lack of definition.
The mystery.
I respect that. It adds to the
mystery, adds
confusion
to
and fear,
layer of horror. Yeah.
But yeah.
Then we cut back to Glenn, who gets sucked into his bed.
And just blood starts shooting out like a volcano.
Definitely not just a singular body.
No, it is freakish, non-existent amount of blood. fun fact about this scene is also filmed
in
the flippy room, and they just pour it in, and it actually like causes the room to like, there's like this one shot where it kind of looks like it's moving across the roof in like one direction.
Yeah, no, it definitely is like.
Well, that's because after they poured it all down, it like
washed.
It started tipping one way, and like so it starts pouring out. It's
cooling.
Yeah, it's crazy. You should really, if you enjoy this movie, and want to know more information about it, you should really check out the Never Sleep Again documentary. It's a very good watch. Lots of information that I'm only giving you parts of and not doing it justice.
Well, if you want it to have justice, watch the documentary.
Yes.
Now, stay tuned for the rest of the stream.
Nancy's dad and the other cops, they somehow show up at the scene within minutes of when this happened because of the timeline. It was like midnight when his TV did the old like sign off, because back in the day television like at midnight would stop airing, and that's when he gets sucked in. But then they're here by like 12:10 because of the call she has with him, and like tells him when to be at when to be like come get me in 20 minutes. So just saying, somehow she does all of this in like that whole scene. Somehow the cops get to the scene within 10 minutes. A little unrealistic, but all right. And at most, you could say maybe it's 11:42 from when his mom woke him up, and maybe just in his dream it got signed off to midnight. But still, it's a little quick. And there's some other stuff that's way too quick that we're about to get to, which is, so after they get there, they get to the crime scene, Nancy's dad and the other cops. Nancy calls the house, and she gets a hold of her dad, and she tells him to be there in 20 minutes by 12:30 to help her get Freddie. Then Nancy somehow, in this 20 minutes, which actually we find out a couple scenes later, is actually only within the first 10 minutes of this 20 minutes, completely like Kevin McAllister booby traps her house, which to be fair, technically Kevin McAllister Nancy'd his house because this came out first, but still.
Good for Kevin.
Yeah.
He Nancy'd his house.
Yeah, he Nancy'd his house.
He studied the greats.
But she sets up all these traps for real world Freddy, and then goes to have a conversation with her mom, like tucking her in, because she's at that point, she's so far like into her alcoholism that she is practically a child again because of how much she's so dependent on now Nancy for being able to help her here. And she does all of that within 10 minutes, and then expects to somehow, in which she does, get to REM sleep and fight Freddy within the next 10 minutes before her dad's supposed to get her. Just saying, it's a little unrealistic. They could have just added an extra, 15 minutes to the timeline. But they chose. It's one of the things where I'll point out these complaints, and I'll complain about them when movies do this. When you give either science or time, you choose to give me that information and then make it like slap me in the face of not making any sense when I just look at it for what you said it was. It's a little insulting. It's like, why did it have to... Why am I supposed to believe she did all that setup and had that conversation with her mom within 10 minutes? It's just a little... It wasn't necessary. So I'm just... That's my complaint about it. I'll move on now. But I really hate when movies do that. This movie is by no means the only movie to kind of do that. Me and Chris have had tons of conversations about how Marvel will give you science information that they choose to give you, which is not accurate to their own science information. It's like, just don't give me the science. Don't give me the timeline. Just whatever. We really want to... I'm not. I'm just moving on. I gotta move on. I have to move on.
It's going to be a whole podcast.
It really will be.
Time.
Yeah, it's just like she could have said 12:45, and then like it gives her a little bit more time to actually get all that stuff set up and believable. But whatever.
I really did not notice myself like this kind of thing pops up during this.
My brain doesn't work right. I overanalyze stupid things like that, but they're there, and it's their fault. They shouldn't have included that information. In her dream, Nancy she goes to her basement to get Freddie's glove, but it's not there. So then she goes to her basement's basement, as we all have in our basement, which is now the boiler room.
The boiler room in the basement.
Yeah, it's the basement boiler room in her basement, as we all have.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, not here in Texas, we don't have basements, but that's a whole different story.
We've got attics.
Yeah.
Which is, I've got my boiler room in my attic's attic.
Yeah.
All right, that's fair.
That's where I keep my boiler room.
Oh, that's fair. I keep mine in my closet. After walking around for a bit, she calls out to Krueger, and she finds a little bed with a cross in it. And then there's this really creepy shot of Freddy staring at her from around the corner. But once again, this is kind of an example, and he does it in the other dream sequence with her as well. He has this, and maybe it's supposed to be an intentional flaw with the character that he wants to terrify them, but she doesn't even see him staring there. That's just a shot for us, which means he could be already starting the process of scaring her so he could kill her. But he doesn't, because he's not supposed to in the script.
Yeah.
And it's just I feel like this movie...
You could make defenses for it, like he was a human. There's probably some aspect of him that is still human, and he was, a child farmer.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Still,
he probably gets off of certain things.
But he could still try to kill her quicker when he realizes he ends up doing this all to exactly her time, where he gives her all this time, doesn't kill her, and then gets sucked out when it's ready for her.
Is there an element of it that is plot convenience?
Yeah, it's just,
and
sure.
it's. But there's also an element where you could say that he's just savoring. I think
you're giving a flaw that is happening literally practically every horror movie we've watched too much credit because of the other good parts about this movie. I think it is a egregious flaw in this movie is how much he doesn't care about killing Nancy when he should.
Pretty though. She's kind of just a girl. I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
And we're gonna get to that more in a moment. So don't worry. We'll get back around.
Creepy shot of Freddy staring around the corner. She finds Glenn's headphones covered in blood. Freddy jumps out and he starts chasing her. And now they're out. And he chases her outside, he chases her outside, and then they fall. And now they're in her front yard because it's a dream and rules don't apply. Which I'm fine. I'm not saying that in rules don't apply. No, rules don't apply. It's a dream. So now they're just in her front yard. And she gets this weird warning alarm on her alarm, which maybe that's a thing some alarms do, but I feel whatever. She gets you have 10 seconds, and she's oh, and so she chases at Freddy and tackles him to make sure she's holding on to him, so when she gets woken up, she can pull him into the real world. And she wakes up, and he's not there. She thinks she's crazy. This shows that she was wrong. It's just nightmares. But then, jump scare, Freddy's here. Her first trap is a sledgehammer to the chest from the door, a swinging sledgehammer that when he opens the door. I guess, and then just in pain because he's not used to being in the real world after taking that sledgehammer, he just kind of falls over the banister. There's no actual trap that makes him go over the banister, but he falls over the banister.
He get knocked back by the sledgehammer in the chest.
Well, it was after he got hit by the sledgehammer, and that hit him at the door, and then he stumbled out over. It's not. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying he falls. He falls over the banister. Where were we? Here we were. And then he ends up triggering this explosive light bulb she made. There's a tripwire he walks into. It makes this explosion, hit him from the back. Then she, runs away, leading him to the basement, where she lights him on fire.
Yeah.
And there's this really honestly cool scene where he's on fire, she runs away. All credit to the stuntman who, all in one shot, runs up the stairs on fire, falls back down the stairs still on fire, and starts to crawl back up, all in that one shot on fire.
Yeah.
Power to him. That's awesome. She closes the door, traps him in there, and she heads upstairs to try to yell for her dad, saying she's okay. And wait no, I jumped a little bit. Sorry.
Well, yeah, the house is starting to catch on fire.
Yeah.
There's smoke filling.
So
and
her
then,
father
like,
comes
she
in,
reaches out the door,
yeah, and her father comes in, breaks down the door to help her, and they start going looking toward where the fire happened, and she realizes he's not there, and then sees fiery footprints that lead upstairs. So she leads up to the fiery footprints, and she finds him attacking her mom, and then this is the point where I feel like the movie really takes a not great turn of what? For pretty much the rest of this movie. Because now, after they get into the room, they put him out, he's no longer there, and her mom is a straight up, like, rotted corpse practically.
And she sinks into the bed.
And she sinks into, like, into hell through the bed in this blue smoke, and it's just like, what? Okay. And then Nancy tells her dad that
bed again.
It becomes a bed. Yeah, it becomes a bed again. Nancy tells her dad she's okay, so he leaves her. And then Freddie rises. Cool shot, but Freddie, he rises out of like the sheet and rips it open, comes out, and she just decides she's not scared, and that's enough.
Another Home Alone moment.
Well, yeah, she runs to go towards the door.
Anymore. You're right. This is the Home Alone ripped off this movie.
Freddie reaches to stab her and then just
disappears into blue light.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. And then I feel like I'm already like, okay, that's a choice for an ending, but all right, fine.
But it's not an ending.
But it's not over yet.
Yeah.
Well, actually, here's the thing. I will say, a little bit of a spoiler. Canonically, that is more so the ending. But the producers really wanted to do something different, so there's a couple extra scenes. Like, canonically, that scene more is the ending. But these next two scenes kind of get erased later. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that definitely changes things, because those last two scenes really imply some other thing.
Yeah, the next two scenes are really weird, and she gets into a convertible with her mom's alive again, and so are her friends, and she gets into a convertible with her friends, and the convertible top comes over, and it's Freddie's sweater, and it locks itself.
It's also, it's super foggy.
Yeah, and they drive off. It drives off into the distance, and then we get if that was the ending, it's okay, that's weird, that's a choice. We cut over to the kids playing jump rope again, and you're like, okay, that's a kind of cool little weird serene way to end it. But no, there's another ending. Because now
his arm shoots through the door
and
pulls
a dummy of the mom through the door hole, and that's where it ends. And this movie really lost me in the last act, I'll be honest. Which I guess we'll go straight to running out of time a little bit. We're fine, don't worry. But
15 minutes.
We're running lower on time, so I will just get to start right into what we normally do at the end here, which is where we all share our general thoughts on this movie. My general thoughts are, I think this movie has a lot of good things. I don't personally understand the absolute love for this movie, because I think the flaws are still very much there, but I feel like, I could be wrong because I'm not heavily into the communities, but people always go, oh, those Friday the 13th movies, they suck, but some of them were fun. This movie is touted as a masterpiece of cinema. And it's not. It's good. There are some great moments, but it is not a great movie. The ending is weird. The acting from Nancy's actress is hit or miss. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's really bad and took me out of it. And it wasn't a bad movie by any means. This movie, by far, is better than, half of the Friday the 13th movies, for sure, in my opinion. Most of them. Most of those, and I'm just basing it off of what we've discussed so far, because I'll be honest, we've talked about at the beginning of this podcast, I don't know a lot about horror movies. So I'm not a huge horror movie expert. But I feel like there's elements of this movie where I go oh yeah, Freddy's awesome. I get why people wanted more of Freddy. But people talk about this movie like it's a masterpiece, and I don't get that. I think there are some elements that are almost masterfully done. But then there's so many elements that are just like that was a choice, that was weird, and like I don't know. I feel like I'm being really hard on when I say that. And I had other complaints that like I'd mentioned earlier that going into this review after watching the movie last night, I planned on really complaining about the overused trope of parents don't accept the truth from their kids, even when there's irrefutable like proof. Like when she gives her the hat and her mom's still like whatever. Like, but then I mentioned, I watched a review, like this video from this guy who like talked about like the symbolism behind her like heading to drinking and hiding from her problems because it's easier to hide from your problems than address them. And I was like, okay, you know what? Unlike all those other movies, I think this movie actually did the parents not caring trope on purpose, not just a trope to do it. You know, so like I don't really complain about it. I don't have that as a complaint anymore. But I do still have complaints with the movie, especially the ending. And especially, I really feel like this movie, for me at least, felt so much more egregious with the Freddy can't kill the main character trope. Like the villain can't kill the main character trope because they have to survive trope. Like I will say, like to not just crap on the movie, because that's what I'm kind of doing in this. My part of this is, I think the character of Nancy is an awesome character, and it's like a strong final girl, which is really cool. Like there are a lot of elements, like, and I think pretty much all the of the 4 deaths we saw, 2 of them were amazing, and a lot of like there was a lot of really cool visual effects. But I just feel like the story had some flaws, especially at the ending.
Personally, I think this is my favorite movie that we've watched so far.
It's fair.
Just as a concept, I think I really enjoy what the movie is trying to do. And I think that while it can be used as a, kind of a scapegoat for plot holes, I think dreams can be one of the cooler areas of like horror to explore, because they are, I mean, we really, like they said in the movie, we don't exactly know how dreams work and why they work and why they are the way they are. And I think as a horror element and a theme, it works really well, especially with Freddy, who's like this very evil, formerly human, and is still very evil being currently. They really toy around with him being kind of just an omnipresent, omnipowerful, evil guy who tortures kids for fun. And I think that they have the main girl syndrome pretty bad. And while I think it is a valid criticism, if we take into account the producer's ending, at least what apparently is the not canonical ending, then we find out that Freddy wasn't really affected by Nancy's, this is just a dream, you don't have any power. As it turns out, no, he does still have all the power that he had before, and is still able to kill Nancy, and her, not believing in his dreamscape thing didn't really matter anyways. And that basically he was just toying with her the entire time. Which I think is even more twisted. Is it like annoying as an audience member to be drawn along on the string of, oh, well, I guess what all I watched wasn't really important at all and didn't matter? A little bit, but there's also an element of, no, he kind of just did that to flex just how powerful he is, especially since this is like his debut as a horror monster.
Yeah.
It's like showing all of what he can do and just how like powerful he is. And I liked a lot of the symbolism that they threw in there. The sheep bleeding in the beginning, I thought was cool. I don't know if I looked into that too much or if there was actually something there, but I thought it was nice. Yeah. Just about everything about this movie I liked more than Friday the 13th, except for, there wasn't as many kills, which I can deal with if, like, the horror actually works, which I feel like it does in this movie. Isaiah?
Well, as y'all mentioned, we're watching this in the direct shadow of Friday the 13th. That's what we finished reviewing. And an interesting link that I'm sure Austin already knows, but hasn't been brought up yet, is that Kane Hodder, who was the best Jason by, a lot of popular consensus, and some of perhaps the worst Jason movies, was actually he was like on the short list to be Freddie, and they passed him over for somebody much smaller and just more malicious and sinister.
He's not smaller, actually.
And
he's might be sick. He's not. It's actually a fun fact. That's why he's not
as buff.
He's not as buff. You're right, but he's actually, I believe, Robert Englund's either taller or the same height as him.
I heard about the height thing, but he's definitely like...
He's definitely lankier. He's like a weird lanky man. Yeah, no, you're right.
He's like more goblin-y, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
goblin-y.
He's just not as physically imposing. Jason's like this, he's, But I find that really interesting, and I think it relates to the fact that this is such... I know that I'm not alone in preferring scary movies with a psychological element.
Yeah.
And this, rather than just having an element, just delves into it entirely. And what really cinched it for me was hearing that Craven based the concept of it in general, or excuse me, not the concept, the name, on a childhood bully that he had. And so these are all like very childlike fears that are just being amplified into the adult world, for these young adults at least. And all these elements of like the very typical, a child wakes up from a nightmare experience that we all remember from our early life are just amplified. And that's my excuse for like the trope of Austin's interpretation for like the social aspect of it, I think is compelling. I think in addition to that, like that's just a very familiar experience of you wake up from a nightmare, you tell your friend, I had a nightmare, and it's just go back to and it's minimized. And like a very deep childhood fear is that, what if it isn't just a nightmare, right? Like, what if this is deeper than it means? And the movie really explores that here. So it's a very primal psychological concept to it. Again, furthered by the fact that he is a child predator. And, they don't explore that to its extent in this movie for, I guess, whatever reasons. But,
probably MPAA.
Yeah, but even what's explicit, like
I think honestly, like
that he's a child killer.
I think the fact that they made it subtext makes it better. Like genuinely, I feel like it's just it adds to the creepiness of Freddy in this movie, especially. It's just like ugh, like they don't say it, and I actually
it's definitely implied.
And I also feel like I want to echo that this is not actually me. This is something I'm echoing from what I've seen in other people's takes. That is even added to it. I think the whole theory about it being like, or it's only half a theory actually, because I believe, if I remember right, that was roughly what Wes Craven said he was going for, was the like middle America sweep under the rug. The things is, in a lot of ways, if he was a child predator, they wouldn't probably, the parent, like, she's willing to admit that he's a child murderer, but she's not even willing to admit what else he might have done, which I think like adds to the like hiding from the parents of like, well, we can't even talk about that. That's so unmentionable. We can't even talk about that.
It's like an underbelly.
Yeah, that's even evil thing that he did. That I'm not even willing to mention. Us parents might even have known it happened, but we're not even willing to. I'm not even willing to address that to you when I tell you how we killed him. Like, it's so dark, we can't even talk about that. I feel like that. Yeah. I feel like that. Honestly, maybe it was the MPAA. Maybe it was just a decision they made at some point at different points in the script. Like, it was a different cut. Like, like. I think it's better. Like, I genuinely think that element of this movie is so much better because they didn't just say it. Like, it makes it makes you have to think, which, like you mentioned, which I do appreciate in this movie, is the, like, psychological element of, like, this movie does make you think a lot more than any Friday the 13th movie, that's for sure. And I think thinking is fun. It's which
thinking is fun.
Thinking is fun, and I also it does it lead to some issues with things like, why is that man standing there? Yes, but they welcomed that by making me think, and I'm still welcome. I'm still glad they did, though.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure it's clear. I do like this movie. I just don't love this movie like other people do.
Yeah, I won't go to bat for it and say it's like a masterpiece of cinema. It got put in the Library of Congress and stuff like that. I don't know how much these accolades it deserved, but especially coming from the villain of Jason.
Yeah.
Having somebody who's just so much more
ominous,
like having such an ominous and intelligent and malicious villain. It's an interesting change of pace.
Yeah. One last fun fact before we head out, because we're running out of time now. Is this movie's actually in a lot. One last little fun fact, but Wes Craven actually based this off of some real stories that were happening around the time, loosely, obviously. But there was, I want to say it was Belarus. No, wait, no, it was what I said earlier. It was
Cambodia.
It was Cambodia. It wasn't. It was. It wasn't Belarus. Belarus was not what I was thinking. It's doesn't matter. It's a Southeast Asian country in the south. There was this these stories of these kids who were having these nightmares and telling their parents about it, and their parents were this one specific story was this parent was a doctor and was no, you take these sleeping pills, you're fine, this is nothing. And the kid stayed up for days, and then eventually when he finally fell asleep, the parents were okay, good, he fell asleep. And then he freaked out in the middle of the night, and they went to him, and he was convulsing, and then he was dead. And then they found a coffee maker in his closet. They found all the sleeping pills his dad had given him hidden, he wasn't taking them. This is, which adds to the kind of horror and creepiness of well, what is the answer to why that happened? Is it Freddy? No, obviously not. But it could be. And
Elm Street is actually a documentary. The movie's actually a documentary, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, yes, it is.
That's it, yeah.
It was based on a story he read in the LA Times.
Yes.
About a family who escaped the killing fields in Cambodia.
Cambodia, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
but yeah.
This has been Horror Boys.
Horror Boys Live.
Been the first,
one of the only ones ever.
Probably the only one ever. And this has been us talking about the first Nightmare on Elm Street. Next week, we're going to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I forgot the subtitle.
Electric Boogaloo.
No.
Just kidding.
Fun fact. Well, okay, real quick. Fun fact. Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo was one of the. They used in the music video, in that movie, they used the moving room from this movie.
Huh.
That same set piece, the moving room set. Fun weird fact, but next we're watching that movie. It's gonna be
Freddy's Revenge.
And it's gonna be a different movie. There's some definite stuff we're gonna have, some headier stuff we have to break down with intentions and themes, and it's gonna be different. We'll see you next week for Horror Boys. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Y'all later.